Okay, so today we're really diving deep into the story behind Benson Boone and his hit Beautiful Things.
It's such a good one.
Yeah, you sent me some really interesting interviews and articles on him.
Yeah.
So let's unpack why this song and Boone himself are resonating with so many listeners.
Well, I think what's really interesting about him is he kind of flips the script on what we expect from a pop star. Like, his journey to music success is anything but conventional. He goes from barely singing to commanding like a stage of thousands of fans in a really short amount of time.
It's crazy. In one interview, he describes himself as like this outdoorsy and sportsy guy, more into like hiking and cliff jumping than hitting the high notes.
Right.
But then senior year of high school, there's a battle of the bands.
Oh,
that kind of changes everything.
Classic story, right? Like, lead singer quits last minute.
Oh, no.
And Boone just steps up to the plate. And he even says, like, it wasn't because he thought he was some vocal prodigy or anything. It was just kind of like, well, someone's got to do it. But you can tell even then, like, that raw energy he has was something special, you know?
Absolutely.
Clearly resonated with people even back then.
It's like that moment on stage unlocked something in him, like a total turning point.
Yeah.
From there, he starts exploring music more seriously, drawing inspiration from artists like Stevie Wonder, Billy Joel, Adele, like these huge, soulful voices.
Yeah, and you can definitely hear those influences in his music now, for sure.
Totally.
But then his story takes this really interesting turn.
Okay.
Because he goes from high school battle of the bands to American Idol.
Huge.
Right. Huge. Captivating audiences, building this huge following on TikTok.
Yeah.
And then he walks away from the show early.
I know. I was like, wait, what? Why would you walk away from what seems like a golden ticket?
I know. I think that decision really speaks volumes about his character, though. You know, to leave American Idol on his own terms, especially when he was doing so well, that takes guts. He talked about needing to find his own sound, you know? His own artistic identity, not be molded by the competition. And I think that shows so much self-awareness and just commitment to his vision.
It's really admirable.
It is.
And that bet on himself really paid off because he gets signed, Beautiful Things, drops.
He's huge.
And suddenly everyone's connecting with this song.
Yeah.
This idea of finding light in the darkness.
Yeah. And you know what I think really drives that home is the way the song is produced.
Oh, yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah, because it's stripped back, you know? It's really bare bones in places, which lets his voice just be front and center.
Totally.
You feel every ounce of emotion in his voice.
Absolutely. It's raw, intimate.
Yes.
There's nothing overproduced about it.
No.
It's just pure feeling.
Yeah.
And speaking of feeling, let's talk about the lyrics for a minute.
Yeah.
What jumped out to you?
Well, you know, they're simple, but I think their simplicity is actually their strength. Like that line, when everything seems broken, there's something beautiful waiting to be found.
It's so powerful.
So powerful and so direct. It really gets you right there.
Yeah.
Because we've all been there, you know, like when you're feeling like everything's falling apart around you.
It's true.
But that like little glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
That something good can still be found even in the rough times.
Yeah.
That's universal.
It really is. And what's amazing is it's not just a nice thought, you know.
Right.
It's something people are really clinging to in their own lives. People from all walks of life have shared how beautiful things help them through tough times.
It's amazing, right? I think it's like his willingness to be so vulnerable in his music gives other people permission to do the same.
Totally.
Like he's saying, hey, it's okay not to be okay. We've all been there.
Yeah.
Just keep looking for those beautiful things.
And it resonates because you can tell he lives by those words, you know?
Yeah, it does.
He didn't let American Idol define him. And that independence, that authenticity, it comes through in everything he does.
Exactly.
Speaking of authenticity, we have to talk about that concert in Sweden.
Oh, yeah. That was a huge moment for him.
Huge.
Think about it. Just a couple years after that high school battle of the bands.
Right.
He's playing for 15,000 screaming fans in Sweden.
Wild.
Talk about a pinch me moment, right?
Seriously. I actually found a clip of that concert online.
Oh, cool. Did you watch it?
And I watched it, and just the energy between Boone and the audience is insane.
Yeah.
It's palpable. They were feeding off each other.
You can tell it was a turning point for him just from watching that show.
Totally.
And he even said in one of the interviews you sent me that it kind of shifted something for him internally, you know?
Oh, how so?
It became less about like chasing fame and more about the connection, like using his music to make a real impact.
It's a powerful thing to realize as an artist, especially so early in your career, that it's not just about singing at people. It's about creating this experience with them.
Totally.
And I think that sense of shared experience is so central to why Beautiful Things works so well.
And he even said he saw people in the audience like crying, singing along to his lyrics.
Right.
And it really hit him that he'd created something that allowed people to find their own meaning in his music.
Yeah. It's more than just a song at that point. It's like this mirror reflecting people's own experiences back to them. And I think his willingness to be so open, so vulnerable in his lyrics just makes that connection even stronger.
Totally. And I don't know if you caught this in the interview, but there's this part where he talks about this person that came up to him after the show in Sweden.
Okay.
And was like, my grandma would be so proud of you. And he like teared up.
Oh, wow.
Which I think it just shows you, even as he's playing these bigger and bigger stages, those fan connections still mean the world to him.
That is such a good detail. Okay, shifting gears a bit here.
Yeah.
In that Montreal Rocks interview, Boone mentions he released a French version of Beautiful Things.
I know.
What is the story there? Is he fluent in French?
Well, it didn't sound like he was totally fluent.
Okay.
But his reasoning for wanting to release a French version I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
He was talking about how music is experienced differently around the world. And he really wants to create music that speaks to people from all different backgrounds.
Okay.
And it's not just about like translating the words directly.
Yeah.
It's more about trying to understand how the music itself might hit differently in a different culture.
That's fascinating.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
That's some next level thinking right there.
It really is. It shows like a real thoughtfulness.
Definitely.
And just this desire to connect with people on a global scale.
I loved that part of the interview.
Me too. And it makes me think about something else from that interview. That whole bit about Spotify. Do you remember that part?
Oh, yeah. About the algorithm.
Yes. The interviewer mentions that Spotify is recommending Benson Boone to fans of Louis Capaldi and Dean Lewis.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Which is really interesting because you got these established artists like Capaldi and Lewis known for that emotional, soulful sound.
Right.
And then Spotify's algorithm is connecting them with Boone. It's like it's recognizing a shared sensibility.
Yeah, like a through line.
Yeah, like a rawness, a vulnerability.
Totally.
That goes beyond genre.
It's cool, right? Like their music comes from the same emotional place.
Totally.
Yeah.
Even if the sound is a little different.
Exactly.
And for an artist as early in his career as Boone, that kind of validation from an algorithm like Spotify's to be put in the same category as those big names.
Right.
It's got to feel pretty good.
It's huge. It really speaks to this really cool thing I think that's happening in music right now.
What do you mean?
Like listeners, especially I think younger generations, they can spot authenticity.
Yeah.
Like they know when an artist is being real, being genuine, pouring their heart and soul into their music.
Right.
And that's something that I think can really break down barriers.
What kind of barriers?
Like language, culture, even algorithms.
It's true.
Which is kind of amazing to think about.
It really is. It's like Boone's just tapping into something universal that resonates no matter where you're from, what language you speak, what kind of music you normally listen to. It's really cool. And this whole idea of like him wanting to cross over into different cultures with his music, it makes you think about the power of music in a different way.
100%. And I think it goes back to something he said in that Melody podcast interview you sent over about how he just wants his music to make people feel less alone, you know? And I think he does that because he's so open about his own struggles.
For sure.
Which makes him relatable. Like his music becomes this way to connect with people on a really personal level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about Boone's journey to becoming a musician, which is so unique.
Right.
The raw emotion he puts into his music, his desire to connect with listeners all over the world. What does it all mean?
Well, to me, it says Benson Boone is definitely one to watch.
Okay.
You know, he's not just following trends. He's making his own way. He's not afraid to be vulnerable. In fact, he owns it.
Yeah.
And he's not limiting himself to one specific sound or audience. He's thinking globally.
I like it.
And based on everything we've talked about, I think there's a really good chance he gets there.
I'm with you. I think he's going places.
Now, here's something to think about as you listen to Beautiful Things. Again, maybe even check out that French version, We talked about Boone's decision to record in French and how that shows his desire to reach a global audience. But what about music's power in and of itself? Do you think a song, even if you don't understand the lyrics, can still move you? Can it still evoke those same feelings of hope, of resilience that we hear in Boone's music? Something to think about. Until next time, keep diving deep.
These beautiful things that I've got.